like clock. I can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
All right, y'all. This is gonna be a clip from my, what is it called again?
Stupid.
Oh, podcast. It's gonna be a clip from my podcast. We record every week. The link is gonna be in the description down below. Ishiki Otsutsuki said that he wants Code to become the Otsutsuki god or maintain the Otsutsuki will. How is that possible if Code himself is not an Otsutsuki member?
He wants them to consume chakra fruit after chakra fruit, so I guess that would make him an Otsutsuki god. I don't know. I can't really answer that.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's a fascinating question, right? Because it's like what does it mean to be an Otsutsuki? Is it like something on the genetic level? Clearly that's not the case for a Code, because the white karma seal doesn't affect him in the same way that, say, a Kawaki's or a Boruto does, right? We're rewriting his genetics into that of an Otsutsuki. Is it a concept? Is it just a title or something? Like it's really weird. And even Otsutsuki themselves kind of act like parasites, where they take over different species and then kind of transform them into what they would call an Otsutsuki. It gets really weird, right? And like they call themselves gods, but then there's an Otsutsuki god that he can become. So okay, are you guys the gods, or are there gods above you, or is the god a concept? It's really convoluted and a little weird, and maybe they'll flesh it out later and make it make sense, but for now it's a little strange. Yeah, he could consume the chakra fruits, and does he become an Otsutsuki via that process? I mean, based off of how we understand the process to work, he'll absorb the knowledge and power of that world, but that's not necessarily Otsutsuki in and of itself. So it gets a little weird. But it's an excellent question.
It just kind of goes hand in hand with the thought that a lot of things that we do hear about in the actual series, but don't necessarily know what it means, it kind of comes back up. You see what I'm saying? For example, Jigen essentially told the Ten Tails, I'm gonna let you eat me sooner or later. Or the time is soon, or something like that. We had no idea what the hell he was talking about, but later on, then we find out exactly what he was talking about. Maybe this right here might be a certain situation where right now we don't truly know exactly what he's talking about, but eventually we can kind of find out exactly a pathway for Code to actually become an Otsutsuki god. What I was thinking about though is that, you know, for a regular human being, remind you, Code is not a regular human being. He is a cyborg, something like that. But for a regular human being to absorb that much chakra, it just wouldn't even work. Like Tonet even tried to absorb a lot of chakra. That right there didn't even work for him because he's not like a full Otsutsuki member. So I just think the idea of Code becoming an Otsutsuki member an Otsutsuki god as we know it, is a bit flawed. It might be a certain situation where he'll try to become an Otsutsuki member first and then go with the plan. What you said though, that right there might be the best possibility, where he just absorbs, or where he just eats a chakra fruit and then he inherently becomes an Otsutsuki member. That makes the most sense to me. That's probably the way that I kind of interpreted it when I first heard it though.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a difference in the dialogue between like the anime and the manga, because I know like the anime, they excluded the whole Otsutsuki god bit. It's not even mentioned there. So I wonder if the anime kind of took what the manga did, like a rough draft, and kind of just cleaned it up and made it more coherent. I'll have to go back at some point if I ever remember and kind of do a comparison, but I am curious about that. Yeah, it's a great question.
So you said the anime took out the Otsutsuki god part, where Jigen actually asked him to be like consume chakra fruit and become the Otsutsuki god?
Yeah, it's weird because I remember being really hyped and anticipating that episode for that very reason, because you know the anime adds things on. So never in my wildest dreams did I think they would take away such an important thing. And I was expecting them to kind of like mention it and then like talk more about it. I was like, okay, I mean, the anime is we're gonna learn more about this Otsutsuki god concept, and they just never mention it. And the same thing goes for like Sarada, and when she like compares the Karma seal to the Byakugo seal, that happened like a while ago, and they never mentioned that in the anime. So it's like, are they going to bring these concepts in, like kind of focus in on them, give them more attention than the manga did, or are they completely gone?
Well, I mean, they did make changes to other things too that, you know, that we know for sure is going to be brought into the series down the line. Like for instance, they changed Sar to having 3 tomo when she fought Boro to having just 2 tomo. I don't think they're most likely just going to completely drop it. Unless that was like a Kodachi idea and they just don't want to go down that route no more since Kishimoto took over. But then again, I think that they're just going to implement it in a different way in the anime.
I've always been under the assumption that the Otsutsuki god, as it was illustrated, is not an actual character, but like a concept of what Code could be if you listen to Ishiki. So for me, like the Otsutsuki refer to themselves as gods, but then Ishiki tells him that he can become an Otsutsuki god. it's like, okay, well, if you all are gods and you refer to yourselves as gods, then how can he become a god? It's kind of strange. And the fact that they actually show like this entirely new entity that we've never seen before would kind of allude to this concept that Ishiki's talking about, as it refers to the Otsutsuki god being completely different than what they refer to themselves as. Otherwise, why not just show Momoshiki like a trio, like show Kaguya, Momoshiki, and Ishiki in that little scene instead of like an entirely new being? So it's really weird. It's very strange. Very strange.
What's I want to read the next super chat. Comes from my guy Loyal Snoop Doge. My guy says, why did Code and Kawaki's karma seal not resonate? The white karma is the same as karma minus resurrection. Shouldn't they resonate? My idea behind it was always that Code's karma seal is just like a bootleg karma seal. We understand that, you know, functionally it's still a weapon, but just because it's a weapon doesn't necessarily mean it has all the other functions of the karma seal. One of the other functions of the karma seal that happens to not necessarily be a weapon is the fact that it actually does resonate with other people's karma seal. And I think this right here is probably the reason why, like, Kashin Koji and Delta, they were like so, like, you feel like they were so excited to see two actual full karma seals in the same spot together. I mean, if you guys do recall, one of the reasons why Kashin Koji essentially let a lot of people live was because Boruto had the karma seal. We understand that right now that Kashin Koji was a good guy, but I think that Kashin Koji would have legitimately packed up Konohamaru just for the heck of it.
The karmas, they don't resonate all the time, but I do think it's strange that it didn't. I mean, you could say, okay, well, it's like the souls of the Otsutsuki kind of resonating. That's what it is, but that's not true, because Ishiki's soul was in Jigen's body, which was inside of Jigen's brain. Kawaki never had like the soul of Ishiki inside of him like Boruto has the soul of Momoshiki, so that doesn't really track. So it's like, okay, well, it's clearly just a karma to karma thing minus the soul. It's not relevant. Or it could be like one has to have the soul and the other one doesn't, but now we're getting into the weeds, because then Boruto's would have resonated with Codes. So I don't know. I've always said, like, it's strange how Boruto is getting washed when he first fought Code, and then Code goes on to explain that he's using Karma V2, which is, like he says, I'm not just tapping into the power like you, I'm tapping into the knowledge as well, and that's why I'm stronger than you. And then immediately after that, Boruto taps into the knowledge. I found that to be a coincidence that was a little bit too on the nose. So maybe there was a resonance thing happening there that just wasn't pointed out, but maybe that's the case. And even with that, Borushiki manifests with new powers that we've never seen this particular iteration of Boruto have, or rather Momoshiki. A Momoshiki in Boruto's body with chakra, right? And then all of a sudden, Kawaki manifests with like this whole new version of a dojutsu, for him anyways, whole new power, so on and so forth. So it's almost like Code is kind of like setting the standard, then Boruto kind of one-ups Code, and then Borushiki manifests, and then he ones up Code again, and Boruto, and then like Kawaki turns up, and then he like ones up Code. I don't know, maybe they are resonating, they're just not pointing it out, but yeah.
It's a knife